Welcome to Soul Therapy. I'm Katie.
And I'm Kate, and this is a space where we take a deep breath, dive into healing, and laugh a little along the way.
Think of this as your cozy corner for exploring how to feel better, grow stronger, and live with more ease.
We'll chat about everything from practical tools to soulful insights, all designed to help you connect with yourself and navigate life's ups and downs.
We've put together this Soul Therapy session series to help you to come back into alignment.
By alignment, we mean living with expression of your true self and values, feeling centered and grounded in yourself, and with an inner peace, trusting in the flow of life and your role within it.
So listen along and join in with the exercises, and let us know how you get on. Ready?
Let's do this.
Welcome to Soul Therapy. I'm Katie.
And I'm Kate, and today we're going to be talking about dating and relationships in the early stages.
I think for me, I recognize that everybody is looking to move away from any loneliness they feel. Definitely, I know that I've had times in my life where I've been, every time I'm alone, feeling very, very lonely and looking to connect with others. I think we want connections for other reasons as well, but I think a lot of the time in the past, I had been trying to cultivate dating connections because I wanted someone in my life because I didn't want to be alone.
Yeah, and it's interesting that concept of loneliness versus being lonely, right? Because they're two very different things. And the intentions behind why we're dating can vary depending on, are we dating because we are feeling lonely or because we don't want to be alone? So one is a search more for connection with
Yeah.
another human, and the other is a search of filling a void.
And I think it can be really difficult, though, for people to recognize which one they're doing. I think that because as children, when we are alone, we need people in our lives to support us. We can't really support ourselves fully. So we get that trend in our lives of when we're alone, we assess, are we in danger? Do we need something? And if we need something, we call for someone else. And so I think this kind of self-soothing approach of being able to be alone and notice the difference between being alone and just being with it versus being alone and being lonely in some way, wanting a connection or spending too much time alone, which can also be a bit negative. We need connections in our life as well, right?
Right.
There was a study a good few years ago now of children in a Romanian orphanage, and they actually found that children that didn't get the connection struggled to develop their brains properly or in the same way that other children who were getting human connection did. So we actually do need human connection for our health and well-being. It's one of our human needs, really, for most of us. So yeah, balancing that up between whether am I alone and that's okay, or am I alone and lonely, but I'm over needing someone else in my life, or am I alone but normally I'm okay with that, but sometimes I'm lonely and then I'd love a connection.
Right. And, and loneliness can kind of go in and out as well. Like maybe we'll have a day when we're feeling lonely, and then the next day we won't be feeling lonely. We'll be feeling okay. Right. So
Yeah.
it's, looking at when those feelings of loneliness actually come up, to just be with them and to sit with them and try not to judge them as even being bad or good, because they aren't bad or good. Right. A feeling is really just a feeling. And the more we can learn just to sit with it and be comfortable with it, the sooner that feeling passes, right? And we can also approach that with a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
What is this loneliness trying to tell me? Is it trying to tell me that I need to foster that connection more with myself? That I need to work on that relationship house, a certain room in that house, right? How can I learn to fulfill that sense of loneliness within me without looking externally for it to be fulfilled?
Yeah, exactly. Where is this longing to connect coming from? And am I feeling whole within myself?
Right.
Before I strive forwards towards connection. Because we want to bring the best of ourselves to others, don't we, really?
Yeah.
I think. And so, yeah, having that in our lives so that we're striving for connection that way. But I think sometimes, I know for me in the past, sometimes when I kind of got onto the dating apps and that kind of thing, I recognized that sometimes I was swiping away there to assuage my own feeling of loneliness by finding a feeling of connection. But and it doesn't really work that way then, because I was going in needing something from these people. I was actually, the connections I was making didn't really seem to feel true, or in a lot of ways enjoyable. I wasn't stepping into connection already feeling good about myself, just wanting to enjoy connecting to someone else. Instead, I had a real aching need in me for someone else to be in my life to connect with.
And there's such a difference, you know, between, and we can just feel it in our bodies when we're connecting with someone from a place of a fullness within us, and you're just like, oh, I feel connected to this person, versus a feeling of emptiness and then using that person to fill that void. Like, it really does feel different, right? And it's almost like the comparison between attachment and connection, right? Because sometimes people think there's a connection, but it could also be an attachment. And those are very, very different, right? So it's like learning to recognize that feeling. And I think it's easier to recognize when you can step back and take a look at yourself and really be honest and say, what is the intention behind why I'm going on this dating app? What is the intention behind why I'm going on this date? Am I looking for someone to take care of me because I can't take care of myself? Am I looking for someone to give me stability because I can't give that to myself?
Right? Definitely. Yeah, why am I going into this? And I think also recognizing maybe that of the kind of wants and needs that we have, not all of them need to be met by one person. It's not a case of finding that one pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and that's it. You need never look anywhere else. I think actually in a healthy life, we've got several connections going on. And through those connections, we get different interactions. And those different interactions bring us fullness through our wants and needs for connection.
Yes, yeah. And I think this is where relationships tend to fail, because people will bring in these expectations that this one person is expected to fulfill all of their needs, right? There's so much pressure that people put on their romantic partners.
Definitely. Lots of pressure, and I've definitely been on both sides of that, where I've put pressure on somebody else, on a partner, to actually fulfill all of my needs or be everything I want them to be. And I've been on the other side as well, where I've felt somebody putting pressure on me to be everything that they want or need. And it's a very unfair situation, and it's not really very enjoyable. It is slightly toxic. So because what can happen is you can get stuck in it, and you can end up becoming more and more resentful of each other, but yet so we can have a love and not want to leave. So I think this is one of the things where, and I guess maybe you see if you agree with me, love is not necessarily in itself enough.
Right. Absolutely. It isn't enough. And I think and I used to think it was too. And I think through personal experience, I learned that it wasn't enough, right? I think especially as, like, you know, teenagers or our early 20s and kind of those first relationships, it's like we think that love is enough. And we have so many sayings like, oh, love will save the day and all you need is love. And while love is important, it's not considering each people has wants and needs. Each person in that relationship has boundaries. Each person is coming into that relationship with a set of values. Each person is coming into that relationship with cultural values, right? If you're dating across cultures, like, you know, the feeling, love is a feeling, and all of these other things really fall into wants and needs. And it's not a feeling. These are very practical things that some people simply need to feel safe in a relationship. So you could love that person, but if they're not giving you some of those needs, especially, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it can be very difficult as well to identify those wants and needs without kind of going into every encounter feeling like you've got a checklist that you're just checking off. I certainly know I've spoken to a lot of people about their dating lives, and they say to me, oh, well, he looks like a great prospect because he's this, 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 and this. Or she seems to check all my boxes, you know?
Yeah.
And it's really not only about that, the same way as it's not only about that romantic feeling of love.
Yes.
It's somewhere about a combined version of that, a combined method of looking at that connection.
Yeah.
And I think that even the dating apps, as much as I've enjoyed dating apps, and I do see where they could have value in life, connecting people who wouldn't otherwise maybe meet, I think that they definitely start with this kind of checklist approach.
Yes.
They've got a very limited view window through which
Right.
you see these people, and you're kind of encouraged to judge them very, very quickly. What do you feel about dating apps?
Personally, I mean, I have not used dating apps, so I believe in meeting people organically. And as long as we're on our path and in alignment, I believe the right people will come into our lives. And for me, that's always been the case. It's like everyone I've dated, I very much met them organically. And I always feel like I have that true connection because they were kind of just there as I was living my life. For me, dating apps feel very mechanical. It's kind of like, oh, I don't want to go out of my way to try to find someone to date. Like, you know, I'm very protective of my energy and where I spend my energy. And I want to spend my energy living my life instead of kind of like sitting and swiping on my phone. Like, I spend enough time on my phone, just like talking to friends, talking to family. And it's like, I can't imagine spending more time trying to find someone to date. And like, my thought process is, like, I could sit here and swipe, or I could just go out and live my life, and maybe I'll meet someone at a cafe. Maybe, you know, I'll meet them organically. So that's always been my view with dating apps. And I see with a lot of people, sometimes it can take the fun out of dating. Like you said, like so many people are going in with a checklist. And it's like on that first date, they talk to someone. It's like, do you want kids? Do you? And I'm like, this is very early days. Like, my advice is always like, if I personally, if I were to do it, I wouldn't go in with the assessment. I would go in with the intention of, is this someone who I could see in my life because I just love their energy?
Right.
With no expectations of, is this someone I can marry and have kids with? Like, that's a lot to go into.
So, because people tend to refer, you know, will say about it, you know, oh, did they seem like a good prospect?
Yeah.
And it's like, prospect for what? What are you prospecting for? Because that means you've already got direction, and you are not necessarily interested in this connection if it doesn't go in the direction you envisage. And I think that's kind of a tragic and limited way to look at our interactions with people, because they could just be a really good friend. It could be that you meet somebody, whether organically or through a dating app, it could be that you meet somebody and 5 years later you attend their birthday party, and there is the person that is your partner, as one of their extended friends, brothers or sisters or whatever. So the thing is, it's about not being so closed off. I think, I mean, I do dating apps, and I've had a lot of fun on them. I've actually met people I'm still friends with on them, but I would say that none of my long-term relationships have actually come from them. And I definitely see a lot of people going on them for very specific reasons. And if those specific reasons don't match with my specific reasons, it can be such a clash of what we're both looking for. Although usually that becomes obvious fairly quickly. But I do see them kind of like a checklist. I agree with you. And I see how some people do say that they take the fun out of dating. But I do think they open a window for people who are just getting back into dating. They are a kind of non-committal, slightly distanced, maybe slightly safer feeling way of approaching somebody. And I think sometimes it can help to go on them even for a day or two, just to notice that there are lots of other people out there looking to connect. They're all different, and it is possible to reconnect out there, particularly after you come out of a long relationship or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So kind of more that idea of just dropping the expectations around it, and maybe not going in with that expectation of, is this going to be my future husband? Is this going to be my future boyfriend?
Go in with a bit more fun. I mean, a friend of mine calls it the swipe game, because I think we need to remember as well that dating needs to be fun.
Exactly.
If it's not fun, if it's a chore, if it's work, then we need to have it's a really bad sign. And it's a bad sign that there's something wrong with the people, not something wrong with them, but there's something misaligned about the people that you're dating.
Yeah.
Or there's something misaligned within you that maybe you're not ready for dating.
Yes.
And I've come across both those things in my life. Sometimes I've actually looked, and what I've been looking for has been the wrong thing. It's been an older version of me that was looking for that. Yes. And sometimes I've noticed that actually I'm trying to force myself back out into the dating world quicker than maybe is really good for me.
Right.
But I think that's one of the reasons it's important not to have a checklist.
Yes.
Have you ever done speed dating?
I've never done speed dating. I've heard of it. It sounds interesting. Like that's something that I would be open to doing, because again, it's kind of face to face, right?
Well, I think this is the thing about the swipe game or those apps for dating. I think if people recognize them more as speed dating, then they wouldn't worry so much about whether they're going to get a good reaction, a good response, find their partner, their life partner or their 10-year partner or something like that in the first few swipes.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people, I don't know what you find, but I find a lot of people get disappointed. It's like, I've been dating for ages, and when you ask them, they've been on an app for a while. They've only been on a few dates from the app. Or maybe they've been on a good few dates from the app, but they've not found someone. But they were kind of, and then there's the opposite stories where someone finds someone the first swipe.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, I feel like there should be, and maybe there is like a term already, but like dating burnout. I feel like the apps are creating burnout for some people, and I've seen this in my personal life and my professional life, is like people are literally grinding themselves down with dating apps. Like I don't know if it's just become a habit and they like need to sit every Friday night or whatever and just swipe, but they sound like so hopeless.
It's quite time consuming as well. It can be really, because setting up the profile and then going through and then actually messaging people, it can be really quite time consuming. And then you do encounter some people who just want to endlessly message, and so that can be difficult. Of course, you also encounter some people who don't want to message at all and want to meet you immediately, but that can also be maybe something that you're not so keen on either. So it's about working out what it is you're looking for from it, and maybe having a bit of a plan going in. I'm going to send a couple of messages backwards and forwards, and then I'm going to suggest a coffee at a busy cafe or something. Maybe in the nearest town I live in, but not right next to my home.
Right. So that you can maintain like the safety aspect of it as well, right? It's like and now you have all these Netflix shows out, like the Tinder swindler and like fake profile and like the catfishing, and like that's a whole other world that you're opening yourself up to when you do online dating, which is also super interesting because people can be whoever they want to be.
Absolutely, but at the same time, they could be perfectly genuine. So we're kind of torn. But this is also, in another way, mildly true of the people that you organically meet.
Interesting.
Because they're not necessarily, I mean, don't we all do this though? Aren't we all on our kind of best behavior or something when we first meet someone? Don't we want them to see a version of us that's the most awesome version of us, particularly if we like them or are attracted to them? And so I think, essentially seeing the dating kind of app game
Mm-hmm.
as kind of fun,
Yes.
and as kind of a different version of that speed dating context, where you're just getting kind of 10 minutes or an hour with somebody, maybe
Yes. Yeah.
maybe evolving kind of 10 seconds to 10 minutes to an hour with somebody,
Yes.
and you're gradually seeing, do you want to spend more time with this person?
Right.
Not, is this person a prospect, but
Yes.
do I want to spend more time with them? Am I enjoying myself?
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of,
Yeah.
is this a husband? Is this a
Yeah.
wife? Like, it's very limiting. It's just like, do I like being in this person's energy? Like, that's all you need to know. And we can actually assess that really quickly. I don't think we can assess, is this going to be my husband or wife really quickly? But the one thing we can assess, because it has to do with energy, is within that 5 minutes that you're around that person, how do you feel? That'll tell you everything you need to know in that moment. How do you feel?
Exactly.
If it feels good, then take their number, see them again. If it doesn't feel good, then move on. You know, and that's it. It's literally that simple.
Yeah. But we also, I think there's also something to be said for recognizing that where we look for butterflies in a relationship, where we look for that tremulous feeling in our stomachs, I think actually just recognizing, because I didn't know this, and for a long time I was judging my interactions with people very quickly on dates and any kind of organic interaction. I was judging it by whether they gave me butterflies. But I didn't realize for many years that butterflies are actually a sign of risk. They're a sign of not knowing whether you can actually get what you want, not knowing whether you're going to get what you feel you need. So I think it's really important to recognize that while people we're excited about or interested in may rise that within us, actually we can have an amazing connection with someone who makes us feel secure.
Yeah.
And in that, we won't really have the butterflies so much necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
because we feel secure in that.
Exactly.
We're not worried about, oh, are they going to call us?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because we feel like when they say, I'm going to call you, or I'm going to message you, or I'm interested to see you again, we just have trust in that.
Yes. Yeah.
That
It's
sounds
true.
very healthy to me.
Yeah. And sometimes those butterflies are your body telling you that, yeah, something isn't right. And if you feel like repeatedly that person is giving you butterflies, well, that's probably a red flag too, right? Like if someone says, I'm going to call you, and they don't, to me, that's automatically a red flag, because they're showing that they can't be dependable. They're showing, you know, that they can't stick to their word. For some people, that could give them butterflies, and they could mistake that for something positive, or simply they're just used to it because of their upbringing, and they're used to the chaos, and they're used to being in that fight or flight, and to them it's just normal, so they don't think anything of it, right? Because we're always using our childhood as a comparison for our romantic relationships, because that's the only blueprint we have, right? So if we haven't put in that work and really, looked at ourselves and our childhood and the impact some of, our experiences had on us, it's easy just to take that and carry it into your romantic relationships. And that's kind of sometimes when toxicity can happen. That's when we can pass red flags, because sometimes we just simply don't know.
Asking someone else to heal us, trying to repeat issues from the past. And if what we're repeating are issues, that's not going to be great, because we have this tendency to repeat issues in order that we can bring out a different result, in order that we can heal them.
Yes.
But more often than not, if you're repeating the same issue, you're going to repeat a similar outcome potentially.
Exactly.
And you're certainly causing yourself some kind of issue.
Exactly.
So that can be really difficult. But I think if we're going to talk about, so when we talk about red flags and green flags, what we're really talking about is is this person actually fulfilling a want or a need I have? Is their behavior, is who they are being, who they are showing me, and that's very important. Who they are showing me, not as opposed to what they are telling me.
Oh, that's a huge one.
So who they are, what they are showing me, what they are being, is that actually something I want in my life? Is it fulfilling some of my core needs? And I think for our core needs, I know I did this. I've tried very hard to work on this actually, because it's very limiting to have too many core needs that are non-negotiable.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have any.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to identify our non-negotiable needs. Some things that we actually 100% have to have.
That relate to like values, like hold deeper meaning. Yes.
Yes, they hold a deep meaning for us specifically. Everybody's might be different, you know. We might have similar ones, we might have different ones, and but we also need some to recognize the difference between our non-negotiables and our negotiables. So the things that we are kind of, yeah, it would be really nice if someone was like this, but you know, I'm not completely
it's
averse.
Not a make it or break it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, for example, I'm a scuba diver. So I would love to date someone who'd like to go on scuba diving holidays with me. But that's a negotiable. That's not an essential. There are other things we can do. There are other ways we can get in the water. I have other friends I could go scuba diving with. So that's a negotiable. Whereas for me, a non-negotiable is that they need to want to have me within their core family. So they need to either want to create their core home with me, their main home with me, or they need to want to bring me into what they call as their main home. And you know, I've had interactions before where people have had their main home with their family of origin or their main home in a different country, and it's just become really clear to me and really important to me that our main home be together, and that not just be me driving that. They want that too. And that's one of my core needs. It's one of my non-negotiables.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I would say, so one of my non-negotiables, for example, is like I love yoga, right? Do I need to be with someone who can go to yoga with me? Not really. Like that's something that I'm okay to go and do on my own, right? It would be fun to go and do this activity
that's one of your negotiables
with them, but it's a negotiable. Like one of my non-negotiables, I would say, is being with someone who is not emotionally stable, because that can really wreak havoc on a relationship when you're with someone and their mood is constantly up and down. And I've had that in past relationships, and it's like, I cannot do it again. Right. And like, this isn't to say that you need to be a perfect partner and you always need to be a certain way, but it's also that ability to communicate. So that's another non-negotiable for me, is like, if you can't communicate your feelings, I can't be with you, you know.
Communication and emotional stability.
Like if you can say and recognize, hey, I'm having a bad day today, I need some time alone, it has nothing to do with you or my feelings towards you, it's just has to do with me. And it sounds really simple, but you wouldn't believe how hard it is for people to make that connection and articulate it, and also realize the importance of communicating that to a partner. Because I know for me, if someone is being cold and distant, I would think, what did I do? Like if my partner is being cold and distant, what did I do? Right. So it's so important for me to have someone who can communicate and be like, it's not you. And if it is me, to tell me that. So then we can fix it.
Communication is one of mine as well, actually. And for me, I also find truth, the absolute truth. I don't want to hear any kind of even small lies to sweeten me up or to make the situation easier. That doesn't work for me because of issues in my past with people who have lied to me. So for me personally, the full truth, no matter what, is a core value. It's a core belief that I have and value within my system. And so therefore it's a non-negotiable. And it's a very good non-negotiable for me, because I've actually, through that, I've learned that if somebody's going to tell you the absolute truth, you're not always going to like what they tell you. And so to be able to work with that, I understand that one of my non-negotiables is to tell me the absolute truth. So one of the ways I meet people in that is I open myself to hear whatever the absolute truth is, and to respond to it rather than to react. So that's something I see as a responsibility I take on when I ask for the absolute truth. So I mean, it doesn't mean that I always have to respond well to it, but it does mean that I have to hear them out with their truth. And I think that's really important. So what would you say then? I mean, I think some people, I've definitely talked to some clients who had difficulties working out what their non-negotiables and the negotiables were. So yeah, do you have any advice you give people for that?
Like how to get clear on it? I
Yeah.
would do a reflection of your past relationships,
Mm.
right? Relationships are literally our best teachers.
Mm.
And look back at anyone you've dated, any
Mm.
relationship you've had, and really sit
Mm.
and reflect on what really bothered you about that person. Like, what was
Mm.
something you just couldn't look past? What
Mm.
was an issue that came up over and over again that
Mm.
ultimately actually caused the relationship to end?
Mm.
That's a good way to be like, this is a non-negotiable, right? And that's how I learned my non-negotiables,
Yeah.
was through my relationships, through that being in a relationship where the person was so emotionally unstable and couldn't communicate, that I was like, I can't do it again. Like, this is
Right.
why I left the relationship. So clearly for me,
Mm.
this is a non-negotiable.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's where we're getting our red and green flags from then.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the red ones are easier for us to notice them. Once we've got our non-negotiables, red
Mm-hmm.
flags can be a bit easier for us to notice
Mm-hmm.
because as humans we've evolved to focus on the negative.
Right.
And so we can see the negative more strongly and more
Yes.
powerfully than we
Mm-hmm.
see maybe the positive. We sometimes have
Mm-hmm.
to look for the positive a bit more. So we might have to look a bit more for the green flags,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if they're things that we're not necessarily looking for in a partner.
Mm-hmm.
They're still awesome, but they're not
Yes.
necessarily things that we've been looking for.
Right.
To open ourselves up to
Mm-hmm.
new green flags that
Right.
might come our way, but
Yes.
while keeping an eye open for the red flags too, and
Mm-hmm.
not letting our emotions kind of fog or cloud or
Mm.
put rose tinted spectacles on. So we can't
Yes.
see those red flags so
Right.
well.
Which
You know what I
is
mean?
so common. And it happens
Mm,
all the time in the early stages of
mm,
dating and romantic
mm.
relationships, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and we're not, well, fully to blame, because like, our bodies are literally
Mm.
releasing certain hormones. There's so much research that shows
Yeah.
in the early stages, right, of dating, it's like you're releasing endorphins, adrenaline, all these hormones that are super exciting, that
Mm.
literally it makes it so much easier
Mhm.
to look past those red flags, right? And then this is why, like they say, like when the honeymoon phase wears off, you start seeing all of these things
Mm.
that probably were there from the beginning, but
Yeah.
you finally took the glasses off because like things are becoming more normal, you're setting into a routine with them, your body's more regulated, and
Yes.
then all of a sudden you're seeing all of these issues that you looked past, and you're like, I'm not looking past them anymore,
Right.
right?
Yes. But we'd like to notice things that are true red flags that are really
Mm,
glaring, kind of, I can't, that's not possible.
mm,
Because of the fact that we actually shouldn't be going into relationships looking for people to change.
right.
We should be taking them as they are.
Yes.
um, we really want to recognize those red flags a little bit earlier on and try and
Mm-hmm.
stay open to them and notice them earlier on. So, again, I think it can be a really good idea to actually have a think about what would be my red flags and my green flags.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, it's a really big red flag if the person I'm dating um, uses a negative or dismissive or uncaring
Mm,
attitude with other people in life. So people who
mm,
are not their focus in life. So,
yes.
for example, people who are, if we're in a cafe, there's the people serving the coffee,
Mm-hmm.
or if we're in a restaurant, it's the waiter.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe someone on the street who stops them to
Mm-hmm.
ask them for donate to money to
Yeah.
charity or something like
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Or a cashier in a supermarket. How they treat other people who they can't be of
Yes.
use to them.
Yeah.
That kind of is a big red flag to me if they don't treat them with respect.
Mm-hmm.
Because it shows, for me it's an idea of how they see others in relation to
Mm-hmm.
them.
Right. Yeah, it says a lot about a person's character when you see how they treat people that they
Mm.
can't get anything from,
Mm.
or that they
Yeah.
can't benefit from, right? That's when true character comes out. So that would be like a huge deal breaker for me too, is like, is this person not friendly to the
Mm.
server at a restaurant? And I
Mm.
think that's like a common one to assess, because a lot of
Mm.
people, when they go on a first date, they might go out for a coffee,
Mm.
they might go out for a dinner, they might go out for a lunch. So literally, it's
Mm.
like looking and seeing how is that person treating the server, because that'll tell you everything you need to know. Really, that's when the true character comes out, because they're not getting anything from that person. So
right, they're on their best behavior with you theoretically, you know, much as we all are when we first meet somebody. So yeah, so you're not necessarily going to see the truth of them in that moment, but anybody who, and also just kind of, yeah, like noticing how they are when you're maybe not around. So if you're sitting at the table and they're ordering at the counter, just kind of minding how are they ordering, instead of feeling like checking to make sure your eyeliner's straight or something. Check and see what's going on over there. Or texting
your best friend, being like, "Oh, this guy's super hot," or "This guy's super weird."
Or as you come back from the bathroom, or this, you know, just checking how that they're being without your presence. I think that gives you a little bit of an indicator or some inspiration to do with that. Yeah, I think that can kind of really show up a red flag.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's just some like red flags that are just blanket red flags, like violence, like any form of like abuse, whether that's physical and mental or emotional, like that idea of someone talking down to you, that idea of someone thinking they're better than you in some way, right? Putting down what you do, what you like, right? Like those, of course, like I think are just blanket red flags that people need to look out for. Right.
Yeah, but I think just going in knowing your red flags, knowing what are your non-negotiables, and recognizing that means everything else is in some way, to some degree, negotiable. Obviously, you decide the degree. And then knowing your red flags and having an idea of a few green flags that might be quite nice to see as well, but being open to others.
Yes, yeah. And when you see things that come up that you don't like about this person, it's literally being honest with yourself and asking, can I accept this? Or can I not? Like, it's either you can accept it or you can't and you leave. Like,
not can I change this?
It's not going into, oh, but can I change this? Like that, like, no. Like,
no,
it's
don't
just,
try and change someone.
You're going down a dark road.
Yeah.
If you adapt that, like, it's very easy. This is when life gets very black or white. Can I accept it or can I not? Like that, those two things I think are so important. And I practice that too. Right. And that's been, you know, that's helped me, I think, kind of get out early in what could have been very toxic relationships, is like just that idea of like, oh, I like a lot about this person. You know, they're super cute. We have a lot of fun together, but I just can't accept this about them. And I know that if it continues, I know myself enough to know this is going to become a bigger issue that's just going to cause more heartbreak down the road if you just don't call it now.
Right. So I personally, it doesn't bother me whether someone smokes or not. But I know that a lot of people I've spoken to, a lot of people who've come to me to talk about relationships, have suggested that they don't want their partner to smoke.
Yes.
And so my answer to that would be, if I didn't want someone to smoke, I wouldn't date someone who smokes. Of course, this can be a bigger issue if somebody starts smoking while you're already with them, or you're already in a long-term partnership. But realistically, if you don't want to date a smoker and you go out on a date and that person asks for an ashtray and lights up, then, you know, don't try to change them. Don't lean across and say, you know, have you ever thought about quitting? I really think you should.
Oh my gosh.
No, take them as they are.
Exactly.
They have shown you a part of their character. They have shown you something, and take that information in and just, are you willing to accept it?
Exactly. Yes. It all comes back to us.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, don't go into that thinking, oh, but I know a really good program for people who are smokers that he could join. Maybe I could get him to join. It's just like, don't waste your energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's so many guys out there that you're gonna meet that like you're not gonna need to change. Right. And it's just, but at the same time, if you find that all the time you're in that mindset of wanting to change, it's working on that concept of practicing acceptance. If you constantly feel like you can't accept anybody for anything they do and you always need to change them, then it's asking yourself, am I actually accepting myself? Because again, we can't accept others if we don't accept ourselves. So that alone could be a sign of, maybe I need to do some more work on myself. Maybe I need to take a break on the dating and cultivate some more self-acceptance, because the more we can self-accept, the easier it is to practice that
And
concept in others.
it's also about you're not kind of looking for somebody to fulfill all your loneliness, all your aloneness. So,
Exactly.
if you are actually having an active lifestyle, you're getting out and doing what you want to do, what you're interested in, then through those interests and through those connections, even whether it's actually through them organically or whether it's through them saying on your dating app profile, I really enjoy rock climbing, then you're more likely to connect with somebody, whether it's at the rock climbing wall or whether it's via somebody seeing your dating profile and saying, oh, I like rock climbing too. You're more likely to connect with a person who's got similar interests and desires as you that way as well.
Yes.
So just living who you are fully is actually going to attract someone to you who is more likely to connect.
Exactly. Just kind of living your life, right? Living your life, and those people that you come into contact with are going to feel more connected simply because you're seeing them as you just live your authentic, aligned life.
Yeah. Right? I mean, I think there can also be kind of this darker side to dating as well. And I know that for me, I've encountered the word narcissism so many times from people that, essentially it sounds like every single person has narcissistic personality disorder, which is the clinical definition. Everybody is a narcissist.
Yes.
But how about for you? Is that similar?
Yeah, that's the buzzword these days. I hear it multiple times a week, and like it's kind of finding that balance between like, hearing what that person is saying and being like, I've heard, but this is the 20th time I've heard it this week.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really made me think and realize how it's become a buzzword. We're so quick to just say he was a narcissist. She was a narcissist. They are a narcissist. Right. And it's, when you find you're consistently meeting people who are showing those narcissistic traits, I also say I think it's important to look back and ask, why are you attracted to those people?
And again, in that, we are not victim blaming or victim shaming, because it's not to say you should stay with that person who's showing those traits. It's not to say you should tolerate those traits being thrown your way. It's to say that actually, if you were drawn to somebody who shows those traits and you didn't see those traits as a red flag earlier on, or when did you see those traits coming through, and did you act upon that red flag that you saw, or did you say, oh, hopefully it'll change, hopefully did you kind of let it go? And I think that's what we're saying here with that. It's not a case of if you have suffered that, and if you have suffered with somebody who has strong narcissistic traits, we're not saying that it's your fault. We're just saying that maybe there are different choices you can make going forwards by recognizing, how can I see this more quickly in people? But I would also say that there is a healthy narcissism that's in every child. So every child, before they are able to really look after themselves, they need other people to look after them. And so what they have is a healthy form of narcissism to draw in that care that they need. And so it is a survival mechanism, and usually through a healthy childhood, we actually grow out of that. And we learn to manage it. It may still exist within our system, within our egoic system, but we learn how to manage it, and we learn not to force it out onto the world and onto others, requiring it to be fulfilled by others, because we learn to fulfill it for ourselves. Food, we learn to supply food for ourselves. We don't require others to do it, right?
Exactly.
But if we don't move through that smooth transition, this is when this once healthy narcissistic traits of a child can actually be perpetuated into adulthood and can potentially become things like not like true narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder.
And I know personally for me, I've looked back and I've been like, oh wow, that guy was narcissistic. I dated a narcissist, right? And then I had to catch myself and be like, oh wait, Kate, like, that buzzword, are you just saying that? But I realized, like, I really right away, and because I think I've developed so much self-love and compassion for myself that I can be very, very honest with myself. But I had to ask myself, why did I stay with that guy for so long? Like, why did I tolerate that? What is that saying about areas that I need to work on so I don't repeat this again? Is it, you know, a lack of boundaries? Was I like losing myself in that relationship that I started to tolerate it? Right. So the more that we can be honest, like the more that it's going to prevent us from repeating these toxic patterns again. Right.
And I think that's really important to be able to not repeat it.
Yes.
If you do find yourself in a state with somebody or in a situation with somebody, whether it's a romantic relationship or whether it's a date or whether it's somebody else within your life, and you think that that person is showing narcissistic traits, have a look out for something that we call DARVO, DARVO, okay? And so you can count out on your fingers so that you can help yourself remember as you're interacting with the person. So you can do it subtly, you know. So denying there's a problem or denying the problem is theirs. Avoid and attack, okay? So they're attacking you instead of actually returning what you're asking them or replying. They deny and they attack you, okay, instead, or attack someone else instead, if you're watching their interaction with others. And reverse victim order, okay? So that means that suddenly they become the victim instead of the person that's causing someone else to be a victim, whether that's you or someone else. So deny, attack, reverse victim order. And if you see that in someone, then that is a sign of them having narcissistic tendencies, strong narcissistic tendencies. It's also something that we don't really want to interact with. That process that they're using is manipulative, and we don't necessarily want to interact with them. So have a look and see, are they using it? Are they using it on a one-off sometimes, or are they using it often? Are you finding yourself noticing they're doing all of these things over and over in one evening you spend with them? And if that's the case, these things, even once, this is a bit of a red flag. But actually, if you see it on repeat, whether it's with you or with others, it's a serious red flag to have a look and say to yourself, do I want to be in this relationship? So this is where we take on the ownership. The ownership of saying, do I want to continue in this relationship?
That ownership of choice, that we do have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. We do have a choice, and it's not about changing them. It's not about making them change. You can't make someone else do anything. I think we've all tried, right?
Yes.
Everybody, I don't know. I know I've tried enough times to notice you can't change anybody. You can only change yourself.
Yes.
So, having a look at that and recognizing.
Yeah, it's essentially like next level defensiveness, right? Like if you bring up an issue to your partner and they first get heavily defensive about it, and then they take it to the next level, which is literally turn it around on you and then start attacking you. Right? It's a big red flag, right? And then that's where we can exercise choice. Right? And too often people choose to stay, sadly, because maybe at that point they're attached. And I'm not going to say connected, because if we're connected, it's a healthy connection, and we actually at that point it's much easier to actually leave when it's a connection as opposed to an attachment, because that's a much deeper wound that we're now projecting onto that person. But it's really asking yourself that honest question and saying, okay, is this actually an attachment as well that's developed? Probably another reason to assess whether you should stay in that relationship.
Yeah, and no judgment. I did that in the past. I stayed well past when I should have left. And so, but if you do notice this, deny, attack, reverse victim order, if you do start to notice that, it is a huge red flag, a huge sign to pay some attention to how often this is coming up, and to see if this is a process that this person is using over and over again. If you find you're the person doing it, are you the person actually turning around and using that on people? note that that means that there's issues maybe within you that you can work on, or that you want to work on. We don't want to manipulate others or feel we have to in order to get what we need. Rather, we want to fulfill that from within, so that then our interactions with others can be fun, can be joyous, can be shared, can be amplified.
Yes.
So we can get more joy and more peace and more pleasure from spending time with each other. That's how our dating relationships want to be, right?
Yeah.
You want to enjoy being in a cafe with somebody
Exactly.
more than you enjoy being in a cafe on your own.
Exactly. And once we learn to cultivate all of this within ourselves, we naturally attract people. That's what I found. Once I've taken ownership of how I want to create and build a life, and I've decided I'm doing it either way. I'm not going to try to find someone to fulfill it or to even, help me with it. I'm just going to look at what I can do. Once we shift and we focus that within ourselves, we naturally start calling that in a partner.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's so beautiful as well when you do get those connections that are so good for you, so close.
Yes.
And I've had them all different kinds of connections. And actually, I suppose it's worth noting as well that those connections I've had that haven't worked out, whether it was organic or whether it's from a dating app, that have started good, a good couple of dates, and then or a good short-term relationship that haven't actually worked out. I've still grown a huge amount from that. I've still had that great time with somebody. They've had a great time with me, hopefully, and we've still connected as friends sometimes and carried that forwards. I definitely have friends that most of the time we forget that we ever dated.
Right.
Because that was what we were meant to be. That connection was actually to be friends.
Yeah. And I mean, I've personally been in both the connection and attachment base. And what I learned is the attachment for me was always easier, or was always harder to leave. It was they were the hardest ones to leave, as opposed to the connection ones, because literally, again, it's like that void, like you're pulling that void away, like you're ripping that out of kind of away from you, right? When you're attached to this person who's filling that void.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I definitely have stayed when there have been some huge red flags. And I definitely have used that feeling of maybe romantic kind of butterflies and what we would think of as that love. I've used that to cloud and cause myself to stay when I really should have left. In the past. And so I have no judgment for people who have done that, because I've definitely done that. Not just once or twice, but I've done that for years. And so the thing is that actually it's really possible, and it's really easy. Actually, it's not too difficult to grow past this, to actually start to use all these tools and techniques that we're talking of here, and we'll talk of in future, to actually help you to feel more confident and know yourself better, and in which case connect better and know someone else better. And it's actually more fun that way around. I really life is a lot more fun. The connections I make now are a lot more fun than maybe connections I had made in the past when I was less healthy within myself. So I'm not coming from a pedestal at all here. We're not coming from any kind of high and mighty. We've definitely been where everyone is, or we have been somewhere near there. So we're looking to connect and chat to people from a point of understanding, not from a point above.
And what I would recommend is to get clear on your wants and needs and your negotiables and non-negotiables. And this will really help you if you're in this dating phase, specifically in also the early phase of a relationship, and you're not sure whether you want to continue. Get clear on wants, needs, negotiables, and non-negotiables, and they will literally tell you everything that you need to know.
Definitely. And ask yourself, am I having fun? Am I do I actually want to do what I'm suggesting for this date? Do I actually want to do it? Because existing through your dating life as the truest reflection of who you really are is the best way to connect with somebody who actually likes that, who likes all those similar things, or who wants to be around who you truly are, and you really want to see them as they truly are as well. So that leans towards acceptance of the person they show you they are when you meet them, not forcing on them an idea or a checklist that you think you want them to fit.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for this session of Soul Therapy.
And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love to connect with you live in our group sessions.
Join our online membership to spend weekly group sessions with us, where we will be talking about topics such as depression, anxiety, burnout, relationships, family problems, and addictions, as we work with you to develop your health and well-being.
In addition, this includes access to a private Telegram group, weekly actionable exercises with guaranteed general feedback from us. The 12-week membership comes with an exclusive offer of reduced price one-to-one sessions with us for the duration of the 12-week membership.
A lot can change in 12 weeks. Come and join us and jump into the life you choose.
Remember that to get the most out of these soul therapy sessions, whether the free podcast series or the membership, we advise full participation in all the suggested exercises.
Throw yourself into this fully and become the you that you have always dreamed of being.